and others. It's a fascinating time, but there's another element to anti-vaccine or vaccine stories, and that's the UK's intelligence agency has begun an offensive cyber operation to disrupt anti-vaccine propaganda being spread by hostile states. GCHQ is using a toolkit developed to tackle disinformation and recruitment material peddled by Islamic State. This is according to insiders. It's the latest move by cyber agents to counter activity linked to Moscow, whose aim is to exploit the pandemic in order to undermine the West and boost Russian interests. The government regards tackling false information about inoculation as a rising priority, particularly as we're learning today a vaccine could be in sight. Philip Ingram is former colonel in British military intelligence. Philip, always good to talk. Nice to have you with us, sir. Just how high up the to-do list will this be, do you think, for GCHQ?
Oh, it'll be very high up. The whole issue of disinformation and misinformation and propaganda that's coming out is very serious. It can have very serious implications across the board. And GCHQ will have an offensive capability that will allow them to remove the sites that are responsible for promulgating it.
So removing the sites, that's one thing, of course. The trouble with the internet is that you get rid of one and another half dozen pop up.
It is, and the whole thing about misinformation, disinformation, it's something that's not new. Donald Trump coined fake news. It's been around since the 6th century, when the great Chinese philosopher Sun Tzu actually put it into his military philosophy and military tactics, and we used it to great effect during the Second World War. But at the moment, because information can be passed around so fast and into everyone's life through mobile phones and through social media networks, then the Russian doctrine of maskirovka or masking, which is what they use to put this fake news out there, is something that means it can have a much greater impact than it's ever done beforehand.
Will GCHQ be looking just at other countries like Russia? I mean, there was a campaign, it seemed, and nobody could confirm that it would have been authorised by the Kremlin, but the smart money said it probably was, where suggestion that a British vaccine or a Western vaccine could turn you into a monkey, that kind of stuff, which was sort of had a funny side to it, but the sense was that underneath it, this was Russia sort of saying, don't trust the West, this is our territory, etc. Will it be countries that they're looking for, or, Bob in the bedsit sitting there making mischief with his conspiracy blog?
No, there's a very difficult balance. Legally, they can only go after countries. You can't go after individuals, and therefore there will be very, very careful. And as soon as they've identified a target, very careful legal discussions to make sure that they can prove that this is coming from a specific country or big organization and is deliberately being targeted to try and cause harm. And this isn't just harm that people can laugh off and all the rest of it. If we look at the misinformation, disinformation that went round about 5G causing COVID-19,
sure,
and 5G towers then getting physically destroyed because of it, it causes people to react in some very strange ways.
Yeah. Is it just the Russians we've got our eyes on here? I mean, the Chinese are never far behind when it comes to areas that we should be perhaps concerned about.
No, the Russians are past masters at it. And as I said, they've got a doctrine which is called maskirovka.
Yeah.
But the Chinese, again, use a lot of it, disinformation, misinformation. They're primarily trying to gain some form of economic advantage in what they're doing. The Russians will try and get political advantage and sow political discourse. And then a lot of the countries around the world that follow Russian and Chinese doctrine, so Iran and places like that, also use maskirovka to try and confuse outside sources, let's put it that way.
I would assume then, Philip, that if GCHQ, spot an area, they're able to shoot it down. I don't mean literally, metaphorically, get rid of. We won't necessarily get to hear about that. There's not going to be a running commentary on how their success is.
No, definitely not. It's much better if it's quietly removed and taken down. They're not going to advertise how they do it, who they're doing it to, or anything else. And it's interesting that they've been public enough to say that this capability is out there. And we heard the Chief of the Defence Staff at the weekend talk about the military's 77th Brigade in supporting the actions against disinformation. That level of support is about the maximum amount of detail we'll ever get.
Philip, thank you. Always good to talk. Philip Ingram, who's of course, Colonel in British military intelligence, with us here on Talk Radio. We'll take calls from you on this 0344 499 1000. Just a point, by the way, on Biden and Trump. We'll come back to that in a few moments too. There's a lot to be said on this because, of course, at the moment, as it stands, Joe Biden is going to be the next president. There is a huge appetite, it seems, to not want to believe that. Somebody here, Sentient Being, says, Ian Collins showing his anti-Trump, pro-Biden streak, totally dismissing the allegations of electoral fraud on his show while championing the vaccine for the fake virus. Wow, that's got everything in that suite, hasn't it? Man alive. I think